Okay, hello. So today's video is a follow-up to a previous video that I did where I was talking about intra-abdominal pressure, shortened IAP. So basically what intra-abdominal pressure is, real quick, real brief, is the pressure that is experienced in our abdomen, inside our abdomen. And this can be impacted and shifts where it's located um, based off of how we breathe, our posture, how we're moving, all sorts of different inputs, stress, all kinds of things. Um, Go back to that video and watch it if you want a little bit more of the exploration around IAP, what it is, what influences it. Today we're actually going to experience it a little bit in our bodies. So for today's video, if you want to participate with me, which I would encourage, you'll need a chair or a stool. You can do this sitting on the floor as well. Just want to make sure you're supported and comfortable. And then you can use a blanket, a rolled up sweatshirt, a jacket, your hand, or like a Pilates style ball. This is about a 9-inch that's only partially inflated. It can be as inflated or deflated as you wish. So what we're going to start with, so if you want to use your hand, I'll show that really quick. You just place the palm of your hand right here so that it can be comfortably between your legs, making contact with your pelvic floor, which is the very base of your pelvis, kind of between like your tailbone, your sits bones, and your pubic bone. And you just want to be able to feel changes in pressure. If that's not comfortable for you for whatever reason, that's where you can use a rolled up blanket, Pilates ball, which is what I'm going to use today. Find my position here and place it so that you can just feel the sensation of whatever's there in that same area. So that would be between pubic bone, which is the front part of your pelvis, your tailbone in the back, and your sits bones, which is pretty self-explanatory. But that whole area. So kind of find yourself, take a couple breaths. If you need to adjust your position, this shouldn't be painful at all. We just need a little bit of sensory feedback so that as we move through a couple breathing practices here, we can notice where there's tension, where there's ease, where there's relaxation, lengthening, contracting in the pelvic floor. And we're also going to use our hands on our abdomen mostly to notice if there's any bulging, bracing, and holding our breath as we go through a few things. So for core and pelvic floor health, our abdomen, our abdominal wall, our pelvic floor needs to be able to respond to changing load, to changing position, to changes in our intra-abdominal pressure, our IAP. So our pelvic floor needs to be able to tense and relax. Our abdominal wall needs to be able to tense and relax. Our rib cage needs to be able to expand and soften in 3D, so to the side, to the front, and to the back. And that also includes this area up here in our upper rib cage, our sternum, kind of near our collarbones. Is that able to expand and soften? It's going to be a smaller movement than down here. I needed some deep breaths today. So in an ideal world, all of this would be pretty reflexive. Now for most of us, due to a numerous amount of factors, we have areas of tension. We have patterns of movement or breath or posture that maybe limit or cause discomfort in how our core and pelvic floor and really this whole area is able to function, is able to expand and release and contract. So we're sitting either with our hands down there or on a Pilates ball or on a rolled up blanket. And first, what I'm going to have you do is actually bear down on purpose, just so that you can experience what that feels like in your body. So imagine that you're trying to let out a nice toot and push down. So I would probably try to do that on an exhale, but if you want to do it while holding your breath, that can also give you kind of the experience of bracing, like more than likely, or even bulging out in your abdomen. So I'm going to do mine on an exhale. So inhale, exhale, push down like you're trying to toot or like you're trying to poop. You may experience your abdomen pushing out, bulging. You may experience some breath holding. So a lot of people will go, just kind of go and not actually move through the exhale. And see what that feels like for you in your body when you bulge and you push down that downward pressure, bearing down into your pelvic floor. Do it a couple times. Doesn't have to be super forceful, just enough so that you feel what it feels like when you're bearing down into your pelvic floor. Okay, take a breath, maybe wiggle. If you're using your hand, kind of shake out your hand a bit. Now that you know what it feels like to bear down into your pelvic floor, let's see if we can also experience a little bit more in our abdomen. So we can remove whatever's underneath us if you wish for a little sensory break so that you can focus on your abdomen. For a lot of people, they find sitting up, it's hard to experience this. So you can also do things laying down. I'm going to turn myself this way. I'm going to kind of roll this up here so you can see in my body kind of what it looks like when I allow my abdomen to bulge out versus core sitting in. So the way we're going to do this is by lifting one leg, okay? So we take a nice big inhale. On an exhale, lift a leg without trying to be mindful. Actually allow your stomach to bulge out. It's hard for me to do because I practice so much not to do that. I'm going to try it again. Here we go. There. So now it's, some people call it bread loafing. It's bulging out. Now let's see if, and I find it's easier for me to experience that if I lean back just a little bit. So now you've experienced what that feels like in your body. Maybe looking at a mirror so you can see what it looks like as well. Let's see if we can lift a leg. And it could be bent, it could be straight, whatever's comfortable for you and your body. So inhale, exhale. See how my abdomen really doesn't go anywhere here. It doesn't go out, it doesn't go down. It's supported, it's core sitting all the way up through. And then on this last one, I want you to notice while allowing your abdomen to actually bulge, what that feels like in your pelvic floor. So you may need this back or your hand or blanket, whatever. And notice where the pressure goes in your body when you allow the bulge, when you allow the downward pressure, okay? So now that I'm sitting on this, I may have to adjust my position a little bit so I don't fall. Please don't fall. It's a nice inhale, which allowing your abdomen to be soft, but not only inhaling into your belly, allowing your rib cage to expand in all those directions. So, and then exhale, allowing your body to bulge, brace, bear down. Notice where you feel that in your pelvic floor. If you have a prolapse or urinary incontinence at play, you may not want to play too much with the bulging and the bearing down, but it's okay every once in a while just to make that connection in our brain, between our brain and our body, to know what that feels like. It's not going to make it worse. It's not going to cause issues to do it a couple times just to make that sensory connection. So now let's do it starting our exhale deep in our lower abdomen down towards our pubic bone. Turn my body here. So you inhale, exhale way down here where my lower hand is first, allowing your sticky outy hip bones, I like to imagine those actually drawing together and allowing that to move up through the abdomen and the rib cage. Okay, so inhale, exhale. Once you've started your exhale and your abdominal wall is corseting in, we're not doing that by muscling our obliques or drawing our rib cage down. We want to stay nice and neutral with our pelvis and our rib cage. Nice candles breath, like you're blowing out 100 candles. Then lift. Woo, it's harder than I'm on the ball. So this may be better to do with my hands. Let's see. Because I'm rolling around. Okay. And notice if there's a difference in what you feel in your pelvic floor here, doing the candles, versus really bulging out. Excuse that belch. For me, there's a big difference in my pelvic floor. When I'm bulging out, I feel an expansion of the pelvic floor. So those muscles are kind of forced to release versus a gentle lifting when I do my candles breath. Yeah. And so my personal experience, I have a tendency towards tension towards like my tailbone, the back part of my pelvic floor, as well as I've experienced some urinary incontinence and some downward pressure. I also have a little bit of an oblique dominance pattern and a rib thrusting pattern, and that can lead to a lot of downward pressure into my pelvic floor. The Restore Your Core kind of approach to core and pelvic floor health and movement has been a huge tool for me in finding different patterns and expanding how I'm able to move and breathe and hold my body in ways that support less of those symptoms and less of that tension, more ease, more reflexive response to different loads. So this is like a super brief little introduction to feeling what it feels like when you allow your abdomen to be corseted from those deep inner abdominal muscles, so like the TVA, the transverse abdominis, versus like your six-pack muscles or your obliques, as well as and making that connection between when we allow those deep abdominal muscles to be the leaders in our support, what difference does that make in experience in our pelvic floor when we're doing movements? And you can kind of play. I like to do this when I like laying down on the ground, a lot of Pilates moves, and yoga moves, and just body weight like moves. We can experience, like, if I'm bracing when I do like a squat, there's so much pressure and like pelvic floor downward pressure. My abdominal wall is not able to support my body, so I'll experience more low back pain. I may fall more into an anterior pelvic tilt, rib thrust, versus when I hold my body kind of in neutral first, finding that neutral, and then candles breath, squat. Now, usually this means my squat's going to be less deep because I'm holding alignment. I'm not allowing my body to really kind of find a cow, upright cow position here. So holding myself in neutral, weight into my heels, candles breath, feeling supported all the way up. And then you can experience it in things like lunge. Like if I'm in neutral, I'm starting that candles breath from here. My hip flexor muscles, as if I'm going to stand up, but don't do it yet. On that candle's breath, exhale. And then I lift up. It engages all these muscles so differently without the downward pressure into my pelvic floor. A Pilates move that we often see is like boat. I'm going to do a modified. So boat pose, which is also common in yoga, but so this position, people will be like, well, can I do boat pose? Can I do whatever pose? And I'm like, well, it depends. Like, it's not going to hurt you necessarily, but if you're dealing with core and pelvic floor imbalances, symptoms like urinary incontinence, fecal incontinence, prolapse, we want to see, can we do that move without downward pressure, without abdominal bulging, without bracing, without holding our breath, right? And so maybe for you, your boat pose at this point looks more like this than, this. If you're, and that's beautiful, that's amazing. So the only way you can really know if a move is potentially exacerbating symptoms, discomfort, pain, is to get to know your own body and to get to know what it feels like when you're bulging, when you're bracing, when you're bearing down. And by bracing, I don't mean like the kind of bracing that people do when they're doing like Olympic lifting. That's a very different situation, whether you're bearing down at your pelvic floor. And so really the place to start is to feel that in your own body. And so that's where kind of playing with what I just introduced you to as far as putting your hand here, using the rolled up towel or the ball, and like actually bearing down, actually bulging, noticing what that feels like so that you can then learn what it feels like when you're not doing that. It's just so playing with it, being curious, being compassionate and kind when you do notice those patterns. And here's the thing, I've been doing this work for almost a decade, just in my own life, postpartum, after having my oldest. And it comes and goes, it ebbs and it flows. So there's times where I can do a really intense weightlifting or more physically demanding like yoga class or Pilates class. Then there's times where quite literally I find that bulging and that rib thrusting and that pelvic tilt in just the easiest, quote unquote, easiest moves. And so it's going to come, it's going to go, it's going to ebb and it's going to flow. That doesn't mean you're broken. Doesn't mean you've been doing something wrong. It's okay. Your body's adapting. Your body has different needs, sometimes from hour to hour. And so if you're able to start building that connection between what it feels like when you're bulging, when you're bracing, when you're bearing down into your pelvic floor, then you can know how to adapt, how to modify as you move through your daily life. Like maybe it's when you're walking, maybe it's when you're playing a game of soccer with your kids, or your friends, you're out like doing cartwheels at the park with your friends. Yes, I'm 45 and I love to do cartwheels at the park. I'm never gonna grow up. Yeah, so I hope this is helpful. It's for sure just like a tiny little introduction to your body and the sensations that you may be experiencing in your pelvic floor. Now, I do also want to mention, if you can't feel it yet, that's okay. Give it time. This is often an area of the body that has a really hard time relaxing. It's an area of the body that can be easily dissociated from due to numerous factors: stress, things we've been taught about our body, about this area of our body, social pressures to look a certain way, to portray ourselves in a certain way, to traumas, particularly sexual assault. And so if this doesn't feel safe for you yet, that's okay. that's okay. And if it never does, that's okay. We can begin to make changes without focusing directly on the pelvic floor. So maybe it's finding release through your hips. Maybe it's finding more mobility in your rib cage. We can come at our pelvic floor health and our abdominal health, our core health, through so many different avenues. Like I like to say, it's, you know, different trailheads to the same destination. So I hope this is helpful for you. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. You can always send me an email. Just go to my website, juliemiddletonmovementandwellness.com. And at the very bottom of every single page of my website, you'll find ways to contact me. So social media, my email. I don't know if my phone number is listed. I think it is. So please feel free to get a hold of me, and I'd love to have you in one of my classes, whether it's in person or online. I'd love to work with you in a one-on-one movement assessment session, or if you'd like to do a one-on-one movement class, that is always an option too. So you can get me for like an hour to 2 hours, and we can kind of co-create a movement class for you. That is a little bit more personalized and adapted and modified for what you need at this time. All right, so sending you peace and love. Hope y'all are doing well.